Hey guys, what's going on? Kulprit here, and welcome to my version of the Timber and Stone Beginner's Guide. Now, what's the purpose of this video? As we look here, I just started a new game real quick. I'm going to show you some examples with some tips. It's not to help you dominate or win the game or give you a leg up. I don't believe in that. I think you guys should be figuring these things out on your own. That's the fun of the game, in my opinion. But basically, what it is not going to help you dominate. It's going to just try to eliminate some of the frustration that can come with this game. This game is now it is in public release, but that is not final. It's not the final version. He's very much going to continue to support it. There's going to be things that don't work 100%, but overall the game is very well polished and it has a lot of charm. And once you kind of figure your way around some of the basics, you almost start to learn what to look out for and what kind of situations to avoid. And that's my goal here, is trying to give you guys some tips and tricks to just kind of help you maximize what you're doing that'll basically enable you to enjoy the game a lot more. So let's get right on into it. My first kind of advice to you is when you initially start out, you see right here is the initial campfire. I haven't done a single thing on this map yet. As you can see, you need to pick your professions. Now, this advice isn't exactly who you have to start with, but basically what I wanted to talk about is who you should focus on from the start, who you should prioritize, because in my opinion, these are the classes that are the most difficult to kind of level up. They take forever. Farming takes forever. A lot of people are going to tell you fishing. Fishing also takes forever. It's actually in my 3 recommendations. I'm a farmer guy. A lot of people like fishing because it seems to work a little better than farming. Farming doesn't reap many returns early on, but that's because you have to make that time investment to get his skills up. Once his skills will hit 10, even better 15, you're going to really start to see some production out of your farms, and your city is going to literally blossom. I'm going to get into some farming trips a little later that'll go hand in hand with this. I'm a big believer in farming. I'm going to have a farmer in my initial grouping for sure, so he can get right into those levels as quickly as possible. And I'd probably make my first migrant I got another farmer as well. Now the next guy, foraging. Foraging is huge. Foraging is probably the most difficult profession to level up. It's not that it's difficult to level. It's difficult to keep those guys alive. These are the guys that clearly go outside of your defenses, and they are exposed to the biggest threat. And the problem is they're not very well defended. Now he's going and he's making updates that make them a little less squishy, but right now, a good forager, really high forager, is very hard to find, and they don't have a very high longevity. The reason they are so important, and this is going to change now, but I'm speaking from beta, is these guys right here. Chickens and feathers, they are as good as gold in the end game because you need your archers to defend your cities. But now the new advent of herding, which I personally have not tried yet, I won't be trying it until tomorrow on launch, and animal, being able to raise animals within fences and things, that should help alleviate that somewhat, but it's still going to be pretty hard to have a forager stay alive for very long. They're just exposed to too much danger. And then the next guy is going to be fishing. Fishing also is very slowly, and if you're smart about the positioning of your castle or your fort or whatever you're going for here, you should try to include some water. Now, fishing is a little quirky. He will stop fishing. You need to check on him every now and then. Hopefully that will be fixed. I don't exactly know what the cause of that is. Hopefully it'll be fixed for release. I cannot confirm that yet, obviously. It annoyed me quite a bit because a lot of times you would go over and you would check on fishing and he'd just be standing there. So I don't like to rely on fishing. It's a good way to augment your food in the beginning, but I don't see it as a long-term plan, unfortunately. Now the 3 that I feel, actually there's more than 3 that I feel are easiest to do. Miner, you can just set the guys up and they go, and it's almost like a passive skill. Eventually it'll go up. Basically, the higher the skill, the more resources they gather, but it's almost an infinite amount of resources because there's just so much to mine on a large map. Woodchopper, same thing. Actually, woodchoppers are a little more valuable, especially in the end game when your environment's very hostile. You don't like sending guys outside of your fortification. Again, if you build a smart fortification, try to include a good amount of trees as you can. Do not remove those stumps because they will regenerate for you. And in lean times, when you might be, it's too hot to send guys outside, you'll appreciate having those trees within your safety boundaries to then harvest and help you get through that hump until daylight comes and you can send someone out. And then I'm just going to say, I have a stonemason here, but let's just go with all the crafting skills. Stonemason, blacksmith, carpenter. These guys aren't that difficult because these guys can be done in a very safe, very secure place. And, until he fixes the morale issues and the penalties for, profession switching, these can almost be done by one guy eventually. Your stonemason is eventually going to get to level 20. Then you can make a resource like rope that any profession can build. And you can just do blacksmith, carpenter. It's easy ways to do. These are very easy So I wouldn't prioritize those so much in the beginning. It depends on your starting plan, but ideally, I like to get a farmer, a forager. Maybe less so now. With it this position might go to herding. Actually, we'll have to see. Foraging is still important in the beginning to help with your food production while your farmer is getting up to levels. But get that farmer in the fields and going as quickly as possible so he can start getting levels before you gather too much wealth and you start to get too much threat upon your place. And then, of course, fishing. Fishing is also a good way to augment your food, as I said. I was going to talk about how in the early game you want to forage. I would even entertain the thought of maybe a second forager dedicated only to chickens. Basically, you can make him maybe chickens and bushes. This way he's always getting the chickens because the chickens don't regenerate just to accumulate feathers. But as I said, that's been changed now with the new update for, herding animals, so that's not as big a deal. But one tip is to, until he fixes the morale system and implements it with his penalties, and you don't want to be profession switching, you really have no choice but to do that. So my advice to you is to then train up your foragers in infantry combat. This way, if he gets in trouble and the game will stop and say your forager has spotted a skeleton, you can go to that forager, you can switch him over to infantry, gear him up, and he can at least defend himself, because he's not going to be able to live very long defending himself as a forager. Alright, so let's talk about farming for a minute. Big common mistake that a lot of people make, that I made, is that they do something like this. Now let's see. I don't even know what seeds I have. Potato seeds, flaxseed. That's good. That's one point I want to bring up to you guys. I know with new merchants and migrants coming in, you can get any seed on a random basis. My advice to you is on your first playthrough, if you do not get flaxseed, reroll. Flax becomes incredibly important later in the game when you want to build training dummies and rope that is needed to build the training dummies. Flaxseed is quickly going to become your most important crop. If you do not have seeds, you're going to be hamstrung until you get them. First playthrough, check flaxseed right away. If you don't have it, reroll. Nobody's going to think less of you. Now, what a lot of people do here is they will go, all right, I got 5 seeds for that, so I'm just going to 5 by 1 and just go. And then maybe they'll do some carrots the same way, and this way, they'll get whatever seeds they have. No, I don't suggest this to you. Here's why. As far as I can tell, let me bring that up now. The way the AI works on a farmer is when he finishes one plot of land, maybe he's sowing the land, planting a seed, maybe he's harvesting a crop. He then goes and he checks his plot that he is inside for work. If there's work to be done, he stays in that plot. He'll never leave that plot as long as there's work to be done in that plot. Then he checks, for proximity. So this starts to kind of, I don't want to say lag him out, but it makes it more difficult. And what you can pretty much get is you can get a farmer stuck in one of these plots, and he'll never travel over to any other ones. So what I like to do, what I will be doing now, is I will be making, I would probably in the beginning make a temporary farm, something like this, just to get started. But I wouldn't let that take up my best real estate for a farm, which is exactly where I just put this, ironically. I will build, even if I had 5 seeds, I'm going to build a big farm. And because seeds are going to be very quickly gotten and it's going to build up quick, I like to have seamless farms because they just seem to work more efficiently that way in my experience. Farmers then now, let's say he finishes his plot right here. He just harvested some corn, let's say. He's now going to look for the closest work tile near him within this plot. That's how I see that it works. And he won't, this way he will, in essence, if you watched him for an hour or two, he's going to move all around this plot, basically. And that's just more efficient. You don't want to end up with a clump of farmers, which I've seen quite often on one little row like this. Meanwhile, a whole crop here is full, ready to harvest, and it doesn't get it. This is just a way I found to be more efficient. Now, perhaps the best farming advice I can give you, the most fundamental rule, is to always keep an eye on your seed count. Now, right now, wheat is not a food-producing seed, so you don't have to worry about that. As far as I know, the only use for wheat, and this is new to me, as of right now, wheat has had no use. That is to be fed to your animals that you are raising and you're herding within your pens for all kinds of supplies. The same goes for flaxseed. Flax is not a food-producing seed. When I say food-producing, I'm talking about corn, turnip, pumpkin, carrot, potato. Basically, you do not want any of these food-producing seeds in your inventory. They're doing nothing for you in the inventory. So make sure your crops are of the appropriate size so that every seed you have can be in the ground. I can't stress that enough. If you have seeds here, they're not growing. If you have seeds here, your farmer's not gaining skill by tending to them. So in order to maximize the efficiency of your farmer gaining skills, and B, food production, you have to continue to build your crops out so they have every seed in the ground at any given time. Now, obviously, you can't watch it every minute in real time, but just get in the habit of checking every 15, 20 minutes, and you'll be surprised. Sometimes you'll be like, holy, I have 30 carrot seeds. I better make a big plot to get that in the ground. So you never want to have the seeds in your inventory. That's the one thing I can stress the most. One other tip I did want to give you guys, and this is particularly useful in defense or combat against mobs, is that elevation absolutely does matter in this game. If you take a look at this archer, I moved up here. I thought this showed it very nicely. Look, sometimes you don't notice if you're just on surface and you don't notice, but this is the archery sphere. So you see his range basically. So here you see it's cut off. It's hard to kind of determine. But if you go down here, you zoom in, and to really take a look, you can see because of the way he's elevated, his range does increase when he shoots down just a slight bit. It's a brilliant little thing to have this sphere. So keep in mind, towers, elevated positions are much more advantageous. Now, that doesn't mean you just take your archers, your low-level archers, and you stick them on the highest tower you can build. No. Because what happens is at the longer ranges with the lower skill, you're going to miss more, you're going to burn up some arrows, and as I've said before, arrows are a very precious commodity. Now, one other thing I wanted to talk about is when using your miner to dig, a lot of times it is just easier to take the dig grid, the designation tool, and just do one layer at a time. Now, you're going to get your miners, they're going to come over, he's going to mine that, no problem. But sometimes, you can't really do that. Surface mining is very easy. Digging a moat, you can just kind of, dig a 2x2, and then basically once he strips away the dirt, now you can do one layer of rock. That's probably the easiest, no fuss way to do it, but it's obviously more work upon you. Now, one thing to keep in mind as you're mining can be very quirky, can be very buggy. The AI has a hard time finding work. You'll notice a lot of times if you have big projects and you're digging big holes or think a moat, that kind of thing, your miners will oftentimes get stuck standing around. Just checking on my miner. They'll get stuck standing around because they can't find the tile to work, or they can't get to the work area, building area. I don't remember exactly how the error says. That's actually a good tip I should tell you right now. If your guy is standing around and he's not doing anything, click on your unit, so this little menu comes up, and hit the C button. You'll see, I don't know if he'll tell me anything right now. He won't tell me anything right now. But if you hit C, it's almost like a debug mode. It'll tell you what his problem is. It might say we have no instructions to build. If you just haven't queued up anything to do, it'll say I can't reach the work area, which basically means he can't get to where he wants to go. These types of things. And that's what I'm talking about here. If you're going to build, you're going to dig tunnels 2x2 or any size. I'm talking strictly about elevation, the Y height. 2x2 is the best because you can see how he can reach this block, he can reach that block, no problem. Myself, I ran into trouble when I wanted to build because I wanted to make mine 3 high. So I was digging tunnels like this. I ran into all kinds of trouble because what happens is he will dig, one of these two, he'll dig these first, basically, because they're right in his face, they're closer to him. But what happens is then he cannot reach these, but he'll stand here and just stare at these blocks, not doing anything. So if you take your miner and let's say you dig down underneath the ground, and then you just make this long 3-block shaft, and then you look and you're not getting any resources, that's because he can't get to them. So when tunneling especially, do it 2 blocks at a time, especially even if you're building a very deep moat or something like that. Just do it 2 blocks at a time to ensure yourself that your guy is actually going to be mining that without any interruptions, and you don't have to micromanage him as much. Now, another piece of advice I'm going to give you guys is build a defensible position as soon as possible. It doesn't have to be anything elaborate. It can be just as ugly as this thing. This is basically a little house made out of logs. I mean, that's it. What you want is a place where you can, if you get a threat, if you see some skeletons come, you can just take them and you can dump your little worker guys in here. And basically what you'll do, it's going to buy you some time. It's not foolproof, honestly. You shouldn't have a problem with skeletons unless they get really close to you. They have very bad vision. But, let's say you've gotten a couple days into the game and you run into some goblins, which are a little bit more aggressive. They will come and they will attack your structure. They will typically prioritize the door. They can break through it. It doesn't take that long, honestly, especially this is just a plain wood door. It doesn't have any iron in it. But it's going to give you some time. Now, remember, you can always hit the P button, pause the game, go through, give you guys commands, put them in armor, give them weapons. Just collect yourself, come up with a game plan. I recommend you doing that, at least on the very first kind of incidents where you run into enemies. Now, on the topic of building, defensive positions and things, on the elaborate side, as you get into castles and forts, and basically if you're building defensive walls that have, gates and things like this that, they're big areas but only might have 2, 3, maybe 4 entryways, make sure you make use of roads. Roads are basically there as a tool. to help the AI figure out how to go. So if you're in a castle and you want to make the guy go outside, he might have to walk an indirect route to get there. Well, if you don't use roads, he's going to walk around the inside of your castle very confused, not being able to figure out how to get out. If you use roads, roads basically tell the guy, hey, this way to get out of the castle. And what you want to do is you want to take the road from inside your castle, you want to extend it through the gate and out, a good 5 to 10 blocks. Just get it out away from your gate. This way the guys are going to understand a little better. They're going to get clear of your gate, and then what they're going to do is as they get to the end of the road, the AI is going to look for a new route. It's going to do some new path finding, and it'll be more easily find where you want it to go. All right, guys, now just some general tips I'm going to give you guys. Do not smelt up your gold and silver until you are very ready to defend. Basically, there's no real use to gold or silver that I've come across, and what that does is basically, in essence, what you're doing is turning up the difficulty level. The mobs and the frequency of spawning and what level mobs you get are based upon your colony's wealth. And wealth is taken, from various things. I don't have an exact formula. Food is one of the considerations. Wealth obviously leads you to think gold, silver, these types of things. If you keep it in the ore form, I am told that it is not as valuable. It makes perfectly good sense. But once you smelt it, if you end up, you're very young. Let's say you get lucky and you hit a bunch of iron, gold ore. If you smelt that up, now you can have gold ingots that you're not prepared for, but your wealth is abnormally high. You might see mobs sooner than you're really going to be ready for them. So keep that stuff in the ore form and wait until you're ready towards the end when you want to actually turn up the heat on yourself, and then smelt all that stuff up and you'll see what happens. One last word of advice: if you have watched my entire Let's Play, you already know this. Do not set your archery training dummies to be rebuild automatically. There is an option if you build a training dummy, either infantry or archery, you can right click it, it says rebuild upon destruction or whatever the exact wordage is, and your engineer will come back automatically and rebuild it. This is perfectly fine for infantry, and that's actually pretty good. Set up 10, infantry training dummies, set them all to be rebuild, and the cycle will just go, and it's much faster, and it's very efficient for training infantry. It is very dangerous for archery, because what's going to happen is your engineer is going to walk. He's going to walk right in the line of fire, and he will be killed. It's only a matter of time, and you will lose an engineer, which engineers can be a little difficult to train up. But the problem is that your engineers usually has some other skills that are very valuable to you, because there's not enough to devote to just an engineer just yet. So yeah, take that as a word of advice. Heed my warning. Manually set up those archer targets. Tell your archers to stand down while doing so. Play it safe. You don't want to lose that valuable colony member. One last little bit of information I wanted to share with you guys is that the 24-hour day cycle within Timber and Stone is the equivalent of about an hour. So when you go to log in and you see that you've been playing this game for 10 days or 15 days, understand that equals to about the same amount of days but in hours. So you might cringe when you see that you're on day 40, 45 and realize you've put 40 to 50 hours into this game. But that's just how this game is. This game is one of those, I'll just play for another 10 minutes and you look up and it's an hour and a half later. Anyway, guys, I hope you really enjoyed your experience with Timber and Stone. I know I have. I'm very much looking forward to public release as well, and I've already put in a bunch of time in the beta. But it's just a very cool game. It has a lot of charm to it. It's just a lot of fun. Immerse yourself in it. Try to learn the game. Again, for me, the goal is to just find the most efficient ways to do it, and let's just enjoy the process. It's not very often that you come across a cool little game like this that's independently developed by a guy that has very big ideas, and so far he's delivered pretty well on them. But he's got a lot more big ideas. I can't wait to see what he's got cooking for us down the road. So again, guys, I'm going to be starting up a Let's Play tomorrow. I'm going to let this one go huge for a long time, hopefully. And you can get all your Timber and Stone news right here, and I'm going to keep you updated on that as soon as he drops it for us, though. So let me know, guys, in the comments how you enjoy the game. Once you get your hands on, I'd really like to hear it after you guys have been watching my Let's Play for a while. Thanks a lot for watching, guys. Take care.